Are we on? So this is episode 2 of Frain Sister. I'm Pamella Jean, and
I'm Samantha Bennington.
Today's podcast, we're going to focus on suicide stigmas and explore how we feel about them and stuff that's come up in the news. And what I thought I'd first start with is overall definition of what a stigma is so people understand what it is. So stigma is when someone views you in a negative way because you have a distinguishing characteristic or personal trait that's thought to be or actually is a disadvantage. Unfortunately, negative attitudes and beliefs towards people who have a mental health condition are common.
There's a lot of stigmas out there.
What do you think about that when you hear that word? How do you feel about it? What does it mean to you? What comes to mind? Okay, we're back from the phone ring.
Oh my God, that's so funny. For some reason, I'm not able to answer this question, and it's interesting how the universe just keeps interrupting this question between you and I, because I have a really hard time wrapping my head around that answer about stigma. Can you give me a little more information of what you think it is? Because I'm kind of confused about it.
I see it as shame. Guilt, shame. I mean, that's another, like a synonym for it, shame.
Guilt is really where my head went to from my experience with everything. Is just, you want to know that you, is there anything you could do? You care. So like, could I have done something different? Did I do anything wrong? Did I, you have all that, or at least for me, I would wrap my head around that more than shame, because what would I be shameful for? I wasn't the one who did it. I'm the survivor, right? So I think I lean more on the guilt side of what could I have done to make a difference? How could I have helped? I reached out. I offered everything I had. What wasn't enough? So that's where I get stuck into the stigma part of it. And that's hard.
Well, that's a common theme. I mean, I feel like even though I was so young and a teenager, I had known that someone had tried to do it a few times, you know what I mean, and not really known that that's what was happening. So you do feel that guilt, if I could have done something different, if I could have said something different,
right.
And so the reason that survivors of suicide, it's a different kind of grief because there's all this stuff attached to it. It's not there's nothing else to blame for it. You can kind of blame, some people do blame the people, but some people also blame themselves. Like, they reached out to me and I didn't do X, or I didn't pick up that last phone call, didn't reach back out, or whatever. So I still feel some of that.
Whether I'm life coaching or whether I'm family member or friend or anything, and I miss those calls because I'm in a meeting or I'm working or I'm picking up my son from school or whatever it is, I'm in the shower, I'm sleeping, you're sick, you don't answer that call and you don't get back to somebody, and the responsibility and the pressure of not being available, and you don't know. I'm not a mind reader, so I don't know that call means this until you find out after, if you're fortunate enough that the person makes it to where they can express to you, where they have the courage and the bravery to actually reach out, and then you're not there. That responsibility and pressure is so immensely thick and heavy. And for a survivor, even if they've survived and didn't fully go through with it, thank God, or something helped them through, but still the guilt, I think, even weighs on me because I care so much. I care so much about people. Like, I would give them anything I have. Even a stranger, I would give them anything I have to save a life. I'm all about light and love. Save life. Save. But again, what would happen if I did answer that phone? Would I have made things worse? Would I have made things better? I mean, I think I've made things better because I am a little more equipped than the average person as a life coach. Did Stephen try to do this more than once?
Yes, but I didn't know what was going on. I know not that he tried, he slit his wrist, and I didn't realize, and he had shown me, and I remember being like 13, and like his wrists were all cut up, and I didn't know what it was, and he was like telling me about it, and it was like little slash marks like on, I didn't know.
Like cutting?
Yeah, like I didn't know what it was. I just
Mhm.
remembered it way later.
I don't think I even learned what cutting was till I was a grown adult, and maybe even recently, like 5 years, 10 years ago, maybe I had heard my first experience with kids doing that to feel anything because they're so numb.
Yeah, you're abusing yourself. For me, it's hard for me to wrap my head around it because you're in so much pain. So why are you in so much pain causing yourself more pain?
Right. Yeah, I have a hard time wrapping my head around that too. Plus I'm scared of like knives and stuff like that. I mean, like, I don't even put me in the kitchen with a sharp enough knife. Like, I'm scared to cut vegetables, let alone my own body. And I'm not laughing at that. It's just that nervous laughter. Like really, you should see me cooking in the kitchen. I'm so nervous around big knives. I could never even do something like that. Although this is where professional help needs to come in. This is where when you're feeling like that and you're pulling yourself out of that, as we've said before, those rabbit holes or those dark places, it's good to have a plan. I've witnessed family members and friends having plans that when they get to that dark place,
so those are kind of tools, using tools.
Right. They have a whole map of plan of attack of, okay, if I'm feeling this way, here's a list of the first top 5 people I'm going to call to help. But we also have to be very careful with that because friends and family can make things worse. As we talked about earlier, you're not really equipped to say all the right things that can help that person. So have a plan if you're fighting depression. Put your number one call to somebody professional. And in the meantime, while professionals are trying to get to you to help you, because let's face it, sometimes 911, sometimes the police, sometimes other authorities that you're reaching out to help are not going to get there in time. So put on your top of your list of your plan of attack to help you get through this so you live, because all your lives matter. Every individual person's life matters. And it is not to be taken for granted. I cannot express that enough to all the listeners out there that your life matters. You were born for a reason and a purpose. Whether you remember it or not, that's the whole goal, is to evolve and awaken and find your purpose. But when you're making a plan, and then be brave and courageous and survive this mental illness or depression or disease, or even if it's substance abuse or whatever you're trying to survive through, top of your list needs to be somebody professional. Then have your list of people, your family, your friends, your mother, your father, your child, whoever it is. And I don't mean to put that on a child, but whoever it is that you need to reach out and speak to, because it's buying you time to get out of that moment where you think your life doesn't matter when the life matters.
I think, too, also with the professionalism, and I 100% agree with you, is that one of the things is, especially a person who has expressed how I have leaned on my own friends when I've had some tough times, and had come to the realization that as much as my friends love me, as much as my friends want to be there for me, they don't know what to do. And by reaching out to them, sometimes I'm making them feel helpless, and I'm making them afraid, and I'm not helping myself. And also, it might be easier at times to find a professional, to reach out to that professional, because there is less of a stigma. You're not worried about, I'm reaching out to my friend, and what are they really going to say? Like, what are they going to say to their family? What are they going to say to their wife or their husband or their best friend? You know what I mean? There is that stigma of like, wow, they think I'm really messed up. Like, can I really and then you sometimes get afraid. You might get afraid to reach out to your friend because you have that stigma. But at least with the professional, it's like that's what they're there for.
It's interesting when you say that, because I know when I have a hard time in life, because I'm human and I'm not a person that fights depression, I naturally don't want to reach out to my friends. I just don't want to dump on them. I feel like also with everything, think about all the professionals out there, all the psychologists and all the life coaches or the counselors that help, or, nurses or police officers that deal with 5150s or anything of those nature, in that nature where they're helping others. And there's also that, I think, that stigma of, well, you're the professional. And so if I'm a professional, why would I dump on all the people? Like, I can't do that. I'm supposed to be strong all the time. So then you get that fear of looking weak or being vulnerable? And then will people take you seriously? Because God forbid you be human too. And right? Mm-hmm. And I think about that a lot. I'm like, wow, well, I can't dump on my friends. They're the ones that call me for help all the time. How am I supposed to have a moment? Mm-hmm. I can't have a moment. And people they have the absolute expectation, no pressure at all, people, of being strong. Like, I have to always be strong. And I'm not. And nobody is. And I'm pretty strong. So I've chosen as a choice in my whole entire life, with all the difficulties I've had and the obstacles I've faced growing up, I've always chose to be strong and to survive and be victorious and not a victim. I don't know how I learned that or had that natural instinct and I want to actually credit being adopted, which is interesting because that's another subject for us.
Yes, we're both adopted.
We're both adopted from birth, and a lot of, I think, adopted children fight abandonment issues, and I know I have. But for some reason, within that abandonment issue, instead of it becoming something that made me a victim, I turned it into, I'm going to be stronger than that, and I'm going to be victorious and choose the positive of, no, my mom didn't abandon me, and this is not to be off topic here, but it also plays into how people can get wrapped up in depression or fear, right? Because we all have our own stuff that we experience. So how do you get strong? So I've made those choices, but I think I chose to look at it as, no, she was young, and this happened and changed her life, and she loved me so much and gave me up. So I chose to hook onto that. So the takeaway from me going left field on you guys, is that when we have the opportunity to make choices, that is the number one strength you have right then and there that people with depression or who are suicidal, I think, forget. You have that choice to live or hurt yourself. And you're not only hurting yourself, you're hurting everyone. You told me today.
Yes, I did.
And that blew my mind, statistically proven. Listen to this, guys, because this is a real, this blew my mind.
It's been proven that with every suicide, the minimum of 6 people are directly affected. So that means it's a minimum of 6 people. And I know for the suicides that I've been involved with, more than that were affected easily. And especially for you, the whole world.
Like the whole world was affected.
The whole world was affected. That's basically also what we're talking about, is how people are dealing with that. I mean, one of the other things that I want to talk about stigmas is I want to bring up, I think it's Kristoff St John. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. He was an actor on Young and the Restless, well-known actor. He started on that in the 90s, and his son committed suicide a few years ago, and he was severely depressed and alcoholism, and unfortunately he passed this week, and by abusing his body, and they're saying it was this alcohol overdose,
right?
And not being able to deal with the loss, deal with the pain. Probably, I mean, as a parent, can you imagine? Like, as a parent, losing your child, and I mean, he must have felt so helpless. I mean, he was engaged to be married. I mean, you're thinking he's moving on and all these happy things are happening in his life. He's a very well-known actor, good,
It's not normal for a parent to bury their child, period.
Exactly.
That is totally out of the normal way that life should go. I can't imagine. I'll tell you something, and I'm going to record this. If anything ever happened to my son, he would have to put me in a fucking straitjacket, and I mean that with all the seriousness. I would not make it. I mean, he's my everything, and knock on wood, none of that's going to happen. Mm-hmm. And more than knock on wood, I'm very involved in my son's life. I'm very aware of who his friends are and who who's around him, and I'm a very present parent. I have to say, with kids these days, I'm so blessed from what has happened in our life that my son had one of his best friends has unfortunately experienced a very similar situation.
Mm-hmm.
And he actually had the courage, and when he became friends with Draven, he shared his experience. And so Draven, as a teenager, has somebody he can talk to that's his peer, that's same, 16 and 17. Mm-hmm. They're both boys. It was both fathers.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to tell too much about their personal life without their permission, of course,
mm-hmm.
and without them having an opportunity. Maybe we can have the kids on the show one day, because you're right. We were talking earlier, too. It's like kids don't even have they're not emotionally or mentally mature enough either, I think, to handle this kind of situation.
Right. That's where the stigma does come in, because you're thinking about this father who
mm-hmm.
couldn't protect his son. He is so ashamed. He doesn't know how to deal with that stigma of, I had a child that committed suicide. What did I do wrong? And that's really where I feel that's how this ended up. And he has wonderful friends around him. All these people that obviously love him and care about him. But the shame, he wasn't reaching out. He was reaching to the bottle. And he had gotten help. I read some of the articles, and one of them had said 72 hours before that he was in the hospital and he was getting help, and and it's just so sad that he didn't make it. But he is a survivor of suicide, not someone who committed suicide. So that's one of the reasons that we wanted to do this podcast, because people who survive suicide are so vulnerable, and that is one thing that isn't talked about. A lot of people talk about people who are, want to commit suicide, but you're not talking about the people who survive it. They are just as vulnerable.
Oh my God, I'm a freaking mess at moments, It's really interesting, the triggers that take place. I don't know if it's relevant or not, but I was sharing with you in the kitchen about how anger just bubbled up inside of me. And I was, in a very public forum and with all my associates and
Sam's
peers.
a really good cook, by the way.
Thanks. I am.
She always feeds us. Yay,
I actually did this morning. Who am I? Oh my God! Don't tell everybody I'm domesticated. God forbid. I don't want to have to start cooking for a boyfriend, okay?
Scratch that. We'll edit that out.
Oh, it's okay. You don't have to edit it. I just don't want any new boyfriends to get any great ideas that I'm cooking for them. Okay, all the top chefs in the world, make note. Amen.
So back to your anger.
Yeah, I actually, it bubbled up, and I'm a survivor, but not as a parent, and you're making me think about what my mother-in-law or my father-in-law goes through. And I talk to them quite often. And
it's going to be hard.
It's very hard. I can't even imagine. And I'm there, and I get to talk to them, and I get to hear them, and I see their pain, and I see their strength. And I'm so proud of them, because we need them. We're the kids still, even though I'm Draven's mom now, and I'm a grown adult, but I'm still the child, in that situation. So my in-laws are struggling, and I know that the pain, it runs deeper than the ocean could ever run. I know, I see it, I hear it, I can feel it. I can feel the love and the sadness when we're hugging or talking, and I'm so grateful that they're somehow pulling every ounce of strength, because they have other children. And even though they're grown, they also have grandchildren, and of all ages, that we need them. We need them. And if that's for anyone listening that's a survivor, what we have to remember, and it's not easy. I mean, I'm just going to just speak for myself. It's not easy. I want to thank my in-laws for being there and being strong, because they've been amazing for all of us. And I know it's not easy and hasn't been.
It's very interesting that you bring up parents, and you kind of triggered me bringing up parents, because I think of my own parents. And I think one of the things that I was needing from them, oh God, this is hard. I was needing them to be upset I was needing them to feel upset. They weren't upset enough. I'm still upset. And I still feel like they weren't angry enough. You know what I mean? Like, I couldn't feel, and I know my mother that raised me, that adopted me, she just shut down. And I realize that now, that was like her armor.
Her defense
mechanism.
Her
defense mechanism and her armor. And it's like, oh my God, you don't feel anything. You still don't. It's almost like I feel ashamed when I bring it up, if I ever bring it up with them, the few times I have spoken to them, and that's my stigma. I just realized, because this happened in the past, Pamela. This isn't Matt. Like, they're trying to be okay with it. They're saying, oh, well, we made our peace with it. And, hearing that was very hard for me, because I was like, how can you ever make peace with it? Like, this is, I've
maybe
hole
it's
in my
because
heart.
They're not biological. They don't feel that attachment.
That's true. I mean, he was adopted, but to me, he was the only brother that I ever knew, and he was my hero, and he was, this special person. But I think that's what's hard right now, is that I realize when you're saying that, I love that you're saying that. I love that you're saying, I can feel their pain. And I appreciate that, because that's what brought that out of me, is I can't feel their pain. Like, it's almost like he never existed. And this is why I'm still angry at them. And it's so weird. Like, just you saying that made me realize, why am I still angry at them? This is the reason.
I'm so sorry.
I know, I'm sitting here crying.
Falling down your beautiful face.
But this is the reason that I'm angry.